So, welcome back, guys. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we have a good friend, Daniel, who is joining us from GM, General Motors. Daniel graduated from the University of Texas at Dallas back in December, and now he's in a rotation program for GM. And he's currently working on their, I guess, their uh, thermal team. He's part of their thermal, analysis team. And I'll let him go into depth with that. But he's a part of their rotation program at the moment. So thank you so much for joining, bro. It's
Thanks.
a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, for sure, dude. Thanks for setting this up.
Yeah, man. No worries, no worries. So I'll go ahead and get started with basic job description.
Sure. Yeah. So currently, so as you mentioned, I'm in the rotation program, which is 2 years, and they changed it so it's 1 year long rotation every year. So I'm currently working as a project engineer in thermal management systems hardware, whatever that means. Basically, thermal, like the HVAC in the vehicle. That's pretty much what we do. At GM, they call it a design release engineer, but I think everywhere else is called a project engineer. So it's in the name. What our role is to basically just take a part from its inception and then put it through all the necessities to then release it, into the vehicle production line. And after that, monitor the part in the vehicle when it's on the road, actually in customers' care for about 2-3 years, and see how it's operating. And if there's any issues that come up when it's on the road, we look at that too to see where did we fail and then what can we fix in our next model years. So that's pretty much the job description. As a project engineer, there's lots of talking to people. It's not really hands-on. At GM, they call it design release engineer. So at first, when you see that, you think you're being a design engineer, but that's not what you're doing. Really, a design engineer over there is called integration design engineer. That's where you're actually in like a design studio and you're actually working more in the inception phase of a part and actually designing it. What we're doing is we're just taking that part and making sure it's being manufactured and put in the vehicle and all that. So a lot of it is just talking to people, talking to suppliers, talking to tech specialists, and it's talking to different people at GM, make sure that they're signing off on the part as it's going from its draft phase to all the way to its implementation phase, all of that. So that's the role pretty much, just pretty much managing the part from start to finish throughout all of it.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious about what you mentioned as far as so you're able to foresee how long this part would last. So, like you said, 2 to 3 years in customer vehicles, right?
Oh, I meant like after it's already. So, for example, I work for the CRFM, so the compressor radiator fan module. So after that part has been put in the vehicle, and when that vehicle has been released to the public and been sold to the public, for about however long the warranty period is for that vehicle, 3 years, whatever, uh, we're monitoring the problems that come up. If it gets sent back to a customer care after sales center, we get that data and we see, oh, the radiator's leaking. Okay, why was the radiator leaking? We do like a root cause analysis, and then if it's a bracket problem, then we would redesign the bracket for the next upcoming model years. So that's how that works.
Oh, okay, that's
A
pretty
lot of
cool.
my job, because I don't actually. So the way it works, in a team, so our team is all compressor radiator fan modules. In that team, everyone works on releasing that part, but everyone releases that part for a different vehicle. So everyone owns a different vehicle program. I don't own anything because I'm in a rotation program. So manager obviously was like, "Well, there's no point in you owning it because you're going to leave in a year," which makes sense. And obviously, you don't want someone, I guess, a little bit more inexperienced actually owning it. So I'm just helping out with what they're doing. So, for example, I do a lot of the warranty analysis stuff. So for the parts that's already been put in the vehicle and the vehicle that's already been released to public, for example, I give an example of a radiator leaking. If there's a radiator leaking problem, then I go back in the data, see, is that happening at a certain mileage point in the vehicle? Is that happening because there's a correlation between at what plant that vehicle was produced, or is there a correlation between if that happens in a hot weather state or a cold weather state? All these factors we put together, analyze it, take the part, look at it. That's the one time you actually see the part, look at the part, and make a decision. So yeah.
Okay. Okay, so that's interesting. So I'm trying to figure out the timeline of this, right? So, you know, part goes bad in a consumer's vehicle.
Yes.
Part gets sent back to maybe a service site,
Yeah.
or and then do they send it over to y'all?
Yeah, if we request it, if there's a problem with it, um, usually these. So before, from what I understand, uh, GM employees would actually travel to whatever plant that is or whatever and actually see the problem. But now I think they just kind of do over like teams or just look at the part. But nowadays, yeah, a part will be sent back to us, and we'll see it to analyze it, see where the problem could have been. And then some testing could be done either by us or the supplier. Depends who made the part. So if another supplier made the fan, then we'll tell the supplier to run a test on this fan to see what the problem is. Um, so
Okay.
yeah.
Typically, how long does that take? So when does the customer get their part back, or
So when that part comes to us, the part has already been replaced in the
makes
vehicle.
sense?
Yeah, so they no longer need that because it's already been replaced by the technician. So
Okay, that makes sense.
we just get the part that was malfunctioned, so we can look at it and see what the problem was. So,
Okay, okay, very cool.
there's a
And
lot of
so, yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, so it's a lot of root cause. So a lot of stuff that I'm doing right now is more in the end phase. There's plenty of work also being done, obviously, for vehicles that are like later model years, so early implementation. That hasn't come up yet. I'm waiting for it to come up because I haven't gotten a chance to really work on that. So we'll see when that comes up. But for now, it's been a lot of monitoring already existing vehicles that have these problems to see what the problem was, and then trying to make sure that problem does not exist in our new programs.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So you mentioned the rotation program. How's that treating you?
It's good. It's good. So when I first came into GM, the program, how it worked, it was 2 years long, 4 rotations. So you had 6 month rotations for each. So at first I came in January, but in May, the company went through a restructure and then they changed the rotation program. So now it's 2 years long still, but instead of having 4 rotations, 6 months long, you have 2 rotations that are 1 year long. So my first
Oh,
rotation was from January to August, which was about 8 months. And now my next rotation now is going to be a year long. And then after that, it'll be one more year after that. So it's a little bit extended now, 2.5 years instead of 2 years. It is what it is, but it's been good. It's been good. I I think there's definitely big benefits to having a rotation program, especially for a big company, because like when you work for a big company, man, it's so confusing, especially when you first get in, because there's just so much. So it makes sense for when an employee first starts out to kind of experience a little bit of everything else to put that picture to see how everything relates to each other. Like my first rotation, I had no idea what I was doing, how that fit into everything else, how that fit into like the timeline of a vehicle, right? I had no idea. Now my second rotation, when I'm on a different side of that, I'm like, okay, I'm starting to kind of picture how all that connects because it's pretty complicated, man. I'm sure. How is it for Siemens?
yeah, no, I'm totally glad you brought up that point, because I think the hardest part for me was figuring out flow. And because what's funny, so I'm a project engineer too,
Yeah.
and so we have similar. The purpose sounds similar as far as, and we're also in repairs as well, but I work at the service site itself,
Yeah.
So when our customers send back the machinery for preventative maintenance, or if it crashed, hopefully not, but if it crashed, then you know the project engineer takes a look at all the inspections that our inspectors have done or finished,
Yeah.
and then based on everything they give us, we make our recommendations. But there's a flow, so the project engineer generates the repair recommendations, then he gives those repair recommendations to the project manager. So you have a project manager over every project, right? So it's like a pair. You have project engineer and project manager together working as a team to knock these projects out. So then after I give the recommendations to the manager, then he gives the recommendations to our client, and he provides the quote for all my repairs. But I forgot one step before that. The So we have a shop. All of our shop does our work.
Yeah.
It does a lot of the repairs on our parts. So after I send my recommendations to the project manager, he actually sends the recommendations to our shop first. The shop gives him hours, right? So this is 30 hours of work,
Yeah.
and then he takes the shop hours and gives those to the client with a quote. So we have an hourly rate, and that's dependent on obviously which state you're in. But all that, and I mean, there's a lot of other things that I didn't mention that the project manager does. He does the quoting and tons of other stuff. I mean, I actually am not in a position to speak about that because I'm not a project manager, but
Yeah.
um, I know that he does a lot of stuff, but it's a chain of events basically. So that took a long time to understand.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm still figuring it out, man. The timeline for a vehicle to be made, like from its inception to here's what we want to make, and then take that idea into actuality, and then actually implementing it, and then validating it. It's still a little confusing in my head because it sounds simple, but I don't know. There's just so many steps involved, and I'm still learning it for sure. But it's
There's a
just
lot of steps, right? So one thing that I've noticed in bigger companies is there's one person that's doing this, one person that's doing this, all sorts of additional paperwork
Mhm.
as well, right? So we have shop routers, which are basically I can't nothing can happen without a signature, basically is what it's saying, right?
Mm.
So all my recommendations, the project manager has to generate like a slip of paper that has all of the work instructions written on it, and then those work instructions have to go to the supervisor, and then the supervisor gives it to his workers. In big companies like this, and I'm sure it's in GM as well, there's a lot of extra paperwork,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you can easily get lost in the paperwork.
yep. You can't do anything without a sign off. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Okay, so you mentioned a couple of the departments that you're working in for the rotation program. Um, I guess what have you enjoyed the most so far out of them?
So yeah, no, for sure. Definitely in the first rotation because that was more hands on. Because I was a test engineer, it was really fun actually being able to drive and be with the newer vehicles. That was cool because that was in their proving ground, so their facility where all the new cars are there. Everyone's actually there, hands-on testing vehicles. That was a cool part because we actually got to take the car and do stuff. There's a track where like a race track where you could you go a certain. You're
That's
not
cool.
clear to go super fast unless you're a little more experienced, but it's still cool. Um, so it's definitely that was really cool. Actually, being able to be driving around like the new EVs, the Hummer EV. That Hummer EV was the coolest thing for sure because it's
I
huge.
bet.
I've always seen pictures of how big it was, but when you're actually sitting in it, you're like, this thing is massive. Um, that was cool. That was the coolest part for sure. My new job, because it's a little bit more uh, project management and not so hands-on. I'm not really at with the vehicle at all, but I do like the flexibility of it, being able to work from home a little more. because the first rotation, because I was with the vehicle, at the time it was more so hands-on. Like you had to be there pretty much 3 4 days, at least 4 days a week. So I definitely what I like about this rotation is I guess the ability to work from home some days. It's also a shorter commute. My first commute was an hour long. Uh, that it got tiring really fast, especially in Ramadan. Man, that it was exhausting. New facility I work in is 20 minutes away. I only going 3 days a week, so it's not too bad. So I'll say what I liked the most was being with the vehicle, and I guess on the flip side is the opposite. Not getting the chance to be with the vehicle as much. My new rotation kind of is a bummer, but it's not the end of the world. It's still there's still cool stuff to be done,
Right.
sure. But the
Right.
coolest part definitely was actually being able to be with the newer cars. That was dope.
Yeah, that sounds really fun.
Yeah.
I mean, how about design though? Like, is there? I mean, in college, right? I was pretty design focused. I mean, everything from the classes we took
Yeah.
to senior design itself, it was pure design engineering. But
So
I haven't.
I haven't done any of that. So I know in college we used Creo and SolidWorks. At GM they use NX.
Use that Siemens.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean Siemens didn't y'all make Team Center or whatever, so we use Team Center. Uh,
Okay.
so that's what's mainly used by the design people. I haven't worked in design. That's something I do want to do. I think the role for that is integration design engineer. So hopefully in my next rotation, that's something that I would want to look at because yeah, as you said, that was a pretty heavy foot, especially in senior design, man. I was on Creo, like me and Hamza were on Creo so many, like literally every day. At one point, I was like, bro, just give me like a certificate. I'm an expert in this thing by now. Um, ever since we graduated, though, I haven't touched Creo at all. I've used NX barely, only because if there's a problem with the part as in my need rotation, I just look at the CAD to see where it is. But I'm not actually CADing anything. I'm just using the CAD as a point of reference to see where stuff is. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
You see
I
a lot.
really want to work in the design. What's up?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Is I'd want to work in design as well. Yeah.
Yeah, because yeah, that was pretty heavy focus. Actually, in our introductory classes with Dr. Fada, and um, even in like kinematics, dude. I think our end of year project was in CAD. Senior design, big emphasis on having all those drawings and CAD files correct. That was really annoying, but whatever. So yeah, definitely like during our mech degree, that's what I love doing the most. I think everyone in mech agrees. Everyone loves doing the CAD stuff. Um, so that's definitely something I want to do in my career at some point. But at the same time, I'm like, I feel like it was more fun in college. I feel like when you introduce the corporate element of it, I don't know how much fun that really. I feel like it's more annoying than it is fun at that point. But still, I want to do it. I want to.
Yeah, I think when you throw on a deadline, then the fun kind of just dies because you're focusing on the
And you
deadline.
have way more restrictions, limitations.
Yeah.
Interior design was like completely up to us what we. Oh, Hamza and the whole design was pretty much his idea. We just kind of designed the whole thing. Had it been like a corporate thing, would have been like we can only do this much. And would have been less fun, but still,
Because budget.
I want to do some CAD work. It's been a while.
Yeah. Yeah, I would want to do some CAD work as well. It's funny, everybody at my company is just like, no, don't do design. It's gonna be boring. It's boring. It's boring.
That's what I
It's
hear
like,
too.
yeah, it's I don't know, like if this is what we're fed during college, if this is what we're used. You have like this image of an engineer, and what that image has been portrayed, at least for me, is that you're engineering stuff. You're not you're not just like, for example, in my field, you're maintaining,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Same.
So you care about maintaining this part, but you're not designing this part.
Yeah.
And so it could be a surprise when you get into the industry and you realize you're actually not designing anything. That's a totally different job title.
It is. No, I agree with that. Like, even I think when I was when we were starting college, when I was like 18 years old, I had a completely different. I assumed that it would be, you know, even in college, I assumed that we'd be like designing cool stuff and everything. And like the first few classes had such an emphasis on the stress and strain of a nail, and I was like, "Well, what?" I was like, "I don't care about this. Like, what's the point of all this, man?" And then when you get to work, you realize that only very few people actually do the design stuff. And sometimes, if you work for a large company, they'll just outsource that design part to someone else, you know, and they're kind of more overworked. So you don't want to be overworked either. So it's like, yeah, especially if you work at a company like Siemens or whatever, where there's already been a history of what they know works. You're not going to be designing, so you're just maintaining it, right? They already know what works and what doesn't work. So it's just like you're here to maintain that.
Pretty much.
Well, I get it, but it's also like, dang, I wish I could. Unless you're in the R&D side, not really. You're not really designing anything.
Right. It's a very specific niche that you have to strive for. You actually have to try to get into those industries
Mhm.
because we don't really know the difference. We don't really know what we're getting into when we're applying because we just want a job. We're super we just want that job.
Yeah.
And we don't realize we might be getting a totally different job than what we're expecting. And a lot of people, including me, really do like the R&D side of things. So you have to strive, you have to create a path to get there.
Hmm.
It's very interesting.
That is really true, man. Like, I didn't think I'd be working in thermal. When you took uh, thermodynamics and fluid mechanics, heat transfer, I didn't think I would ever actually be working in that until it became my first job, and I was like, dang it. Especially when we took freaking thermo during COVID, dude. I'll be honest, I didn't really learn thermo at the time. It being I was home, and I don't know, man. I didn't really fluids. I actually learned that was fun, stressful fun with my
Yeah,
boys.
fluids is one of those. I mean, I would love to see the application of fluids in a job
Yeah.
because we we do work with a little bit of the only kind of fluids that we encounter with machinery is gases that are going through the machine. What gas is going through? Is it hydrogen sulfide or whatever? What gas is going through this machine?
Yeah.
But when the machine gets here, there's nothing inside of it, right? It's not running anymore, so you don't do much fluid calculations. But that would be a very interesting application to be able to see fluid mechanics. Basically, that's the class we took. How
I
that comes into play.
I think that would be a huge application if you're working like subsea engineering. Uh, that'd be dope, obviously.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
So you I guess you've worked for GM for about 8 months, maybe 9 months by
Or
now.
like
So
10 months now, technically. So
10 months. Wow, that's awesome.
time.
So what I guess pros and cons of what you're doing. What do you feel? How do you feel on that?
Like pros and cons of working in GM.
Yep. Well, not necessarily GM, but the job itself, I
Well,
guess. The tasks you're doing, things like that.
yeah. I mean, pro being in this kind of new era of EVs and being able to work on that, that's pretty cool. Because it's relatively new, right? We had 100 years perfecting the ICE car, so now, even though they made a EV, decades ago, but it wasn't. We're still trying to perfect it. It's nowhere near the perfection of an ICE car, right? So being able to be like on the front lines of that, actually being there and actually seeing the inside of that, of what it's really like, it's cool. It's definitely cool. You get a lot more EV literacy than anyone else. Really, that's cool. The con will be the opposite of that, to be honest. Because it's so new, there's so much we don't know. There's so many engineers at GM, and it's not their fault. I mean, they've admitted openly, like, yeah, we're all learning here. We all don't. As I said, we spent 100 years perfecting the ICE car, so everyone knows how to do that. And now GM decided to have fully electric by 2035, so everyone's learning. So it's like that's a pro, but it can also be a con because sometimes, some vehicles are made and they don't have the best. They're not the best, obviously, because there's work to be done. So that can be a con. So yeah, I mean, it's a cool time to be working in automotive for sure. I will say though, I feel like there needs to be more emphasis in like having an actual infrastructure than the EV. Like Tesla did that really well. Say what you want about their car. I don't really care. They really prioritize their infrastructure, their charging network. I think that's something that every other company that works in EVs should be doing. But I think that is something that I wish was prioritized more. But yeah, that's that.
Yeah, well, that's a great way to end it off there. Before I let you go, is there anything you wanted to mention to the audience, people that are studying engineering right now and are watching these videos?
Yeah, man, don't give up on applying for work, man. Like, I mean, you even know there was a time when when we were doing fluid mechanics, so fall 2021, there was a time I was looking at my courses, and I think it was after midterms. I saw my grades, and I was like, I don't know if we're gonna get through it. Like, I was thinking about everything. I was like planning it all out. I'm like, am I even gonna graduate? Do I need to do a career change? Email rejections everywhere. So anyone that's currently doing school, don't give up, man. I mean, everyone gets a job eventually, even if you don't have any internships or anything. I've seen people who never got an internship in their college career, but they ended up getting a really good entry-level job, So I think that's something I would say, don't give up. And also, don't feel pressured to think that you have to know what you want to do in mech when you graduate. You're only 22, man. You don't need to have it figured out. I would say whatever job you do get, be open to it and learn it, just be open-minded in whatever industry you end up being in. Don't try to close yourself off into one industry. I would say, just try learning, man. That's the biggest thing. And yeah, don't give up on work. Don't give up on applying for work. It'll come. It'll come. It happened to us, and I don't think I should have ever gotten a job. So it'll happen to anyone else. So yeah,
guys, if we were able to get a job, you can get a job.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
That was a tough time.
That was,
and you said it perfectly. Mm-hmm. There will always be a time where you're looking at your classes and you're looking at your grades, and those thoughts definitely creep up. Am I doing the right thing?
Yep.
But you got to. So, with that being said, that was a great way to end this video. Thank you so much for joining, and hopefully we can have you back sometime in the future.
Yeah, for sure, dude. Thank you, man. Thank you for having me here, bro.
Yeah, man. Alrighty. Well, I'll catch you later. Take care of yourself and talk soon.
All right. Yeah.
All right, man. Later.
Yeah. See you, man.